Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It is great to see you this Friday night. Welcome back. This light is very bright, isn't it? I'm debating whether it should even be there. Let's see how it goes. It's good to see you. Whew. All right, let's see. Ryan, good to see you. Happy, cool evening in North Texas. Andy Warhol Jigsaw Puzzle. Hard pear cider tonight. Things are good, huh? That sounds amazing. Linda H., great to see you in Massachusetts. Robin, cheers, my dears, in Wisconsin. I'll have what she's having tonight. It's a nice stout. It's a chocolate hazelnut imperial stout. It's a bit regal. More regal than just regular stout, huh? Cheers, my dears. Becky, great to see you. Great to see you. Great gallery night last time, wasn't it? We are going to have a great show tonight. I don't know if I even got into this. I'm still deciding about this light. Every time I see myself, I feel like I'm being x-rayed. Tonight is a cozy kind of romantic rug night for us. We are looking at a bunch of antique rugs that had been in auction over the last years in two primary auction houses that I'll show you. And I went through some of these older catalogs, and I was looking at some of these rugs that I personally have never seen before. And I thought, let's not let these just like disappear into the woodwork. I made a show of about 50 slides of some of these rugs that I found that I thought had really extraordinary, exquisite, and special detail about them. And I thought we would enjoy looking at those together. So a nice, easy, cozy night tonight, right? Oh man. Hi Lisa, cheers in Pennsylvania. And Barbara, it was great seeing you earlier. Cheers, my dears, in Toronto. Jay, thank you for logging on. Good to see you. Doreen, good to see you in upstate New York. And Lorraine, happy Friday night. Ryan, first 2 days of the Advent calendar. Okay, great. Yep, they're all a little bit different because they got ordered at different times, and I sold out of the first batch and I went into the next wave, so they're all a little bit different, but they should all be great, I hope. Lots of materials in, in there, right? Melanie, great to see you. Cold and wet in Mount Vernon. Oh gosh, I bet. Nice hard cider tonight. That sounds good. Cat's Gallery, happy Friday night. Dave, also in Toronto. Pizza and cider. Those are two of your faves, huh? Those are two things you have a lot. It sounds really good. Joy, great to see you in Port Charlotte, Florida. And Chrissy, happy cocktail night. It's too bright. Okay. I thought so. I thought so. Okay, let me get rid of it. Now, is this going to be like Goldilocks and Three Bears? Is that bright enough? I colored my hair too. You can probably notice that. For the holidays, let's just do it, right? Juliet, great to see you in Maryland. I wonder if you have any status update on your Chesapeake series. Are you done for the moment, or are you already evolving? Will be number 4, right? You're loving the Christmas boxes. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, it is really bright, Jay. That light is really bright. I feel like I need something, but that is maybe too much. Or maybe I don't need something. I just feel very washed out. Let's see. Thank you. Okay, great. So it's cozy night tonight, right? We don't have to go crazy with light, crazy lights, disco lights. So yeah, it's gonna be a looking through these old auction catalog night kind of a night. As it happened, I found a bunch of Pook and Pook. Pook and Pook is one of the great auction houses, right? This is what their catalogs look like. And because they specialize in folk art, in early American art, that seems to be the kind of theme of most of their auctions, even ones that have other bling. This one's period furniture, fine art, and accessories, but there were dozens of hooked rugs in there too. I have tons and tons of these catalogs. These are some of the Pooks. I have a lot more. And then I found, recently at an antique store, I found Americana. Nope, that's not the brand. I'm wondering what the auction house is. It is called Americana and Fine Arts Auction. No, at the Cyr Auction Gallery, CYR. So I found a ton of these as well. I don't know if you've seen this auction house yet, but it's extraordinary how many hooked rugs they have in their catalogs too. And in some cases, they are rugs that I've seen before because they're patterns that I've seen before. But in many cases, I have not seen them at all before. And that's kind of exciting. And I want to remark on them because it's like fleeting, isn't it? I don't want them to just disappear and for us never to remark on them because they might be patterns that you have seen, that you recognize, that you like. And if that's the case, please shout out in the thread, oh, I know that pattern, right? I think that's a whatever pattern. Please shout it out, even if you just suspect it or you feel like you've seen it before. I'm just trying to get a feel for some of these, making sure I have all my glasses ready. Just trying to get a feel for some of these and see, if any of these look familiar, or we can determine if any of them are commercial patterns. Because I tried to weed out the ones from the catalogs that I thought were commercial patterns. Not that they're not as interesting, but just for the sake of trying to do like a purely folky night. Juliet says, I'm working. How did I know that? I'm working on Chesapeake Fantasy Rug series number 4. It's a quad set of 4 8x8 pieces. Okay. Okay, so number 4 is actually 4 pieces. So it's going to be a set of 4 small pieces at 8x8. Ooh, that sounds nice. Gift for your parents. That sounds very nice. You have to keep us updated on that, right? Oh dear, I'm awfully tired. I have to say I'm very sick too. So I'm trying to slodge through all that stuff. So a little bit of wiggle room tonight as I stumble for words, because it's hard. We ran a great class today, the second offering of the Designing Like the Great Pattern Makers series. I feel like it was a great class, but I struggled with the computer in the middle, and that always stops my heart, like for many beats. Amazing, right? Amazing to struggle so much with the computer, but it was still lots of fun. I hope you had fun, Barbara. So let's come over here and let's start looking at some of these, and you give me some shout outs if these are things that you've seen before, that you like the look of. Like I say, I have about 50 of these rugs. So this one, to me, now a lot of these rugs are in vignette situations, right? So in the auction catalog, particularly with the Sear auction house, they put them into these kind of period furniture vignettes, and that's super fun. So this one, I think, is a commercial pattern. I think it must be. And they had billed this as like a 19th century rug, which it might be. It also might be an early 20th century rug, but it's a remarkable looking rug, I think. It's very pretty, very lush. It is an earlier rug. Thumbs up on video, and always thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. I'm trying, just pushing, right? When they photograph something like this with like the furniture and the little sort of captain's desk next to it, it looks extra good, doesn't it? And I love it when in auction catalogs they put in the prices that things went for. I didn't have enough time between the class and tonight to put together finished prices, and 90% of them didn't have finished prices. So it's just a question of looking at the rug, knowing that these were up for auction. We know that rugs return to auction on a regular basis. We know with the Barbara Johnson collection that those rugs, we've seen some of those go to auction 2, 3, or more times, right, in different auction houses, different years. So there is a population of people who are buying and flipping, or trying to resell, right, for a profit. And it's always kind of hit or miss as to whether or not the market is there, doesn't it? And it always really depends on the rug itself, the quality of the rug, and of course the times, right? Because we are still in COVID times now, and people don't always at auction situations get to see the goods before you bid on them, because you're not always there in person. And online, a lot of things can go wrong. Wendy, good to see you. It was fun. It was a fun class, the Design Like class. We did a lot of making, and I'm so excited to get a little window of time to fool around on the computer and stuff and figure out some more patterns, and so it really was fun. Oh, thanks, Barbara. I get so frustrated with the computer stuff. It's just it does me in. And you know what it is? It's like, I guess I'm preconditioned with stuff like this, and losing all those shows like a week ago. As soon as something bad starts happening, like something like the cursor stopped working twice today, my heart just like ceases. Like it just doesn't want to beat anymore. It's that waiting for the other shoe to drop thing, because it's so trying, and you've been there before and you don't want to play that game again. It's just one of those, isn't it? I bet you know the feeling. If it's not computers, it's probably something else. I think we all know that feeling. So this is a nice rug, but I wouldn't I mean, if I saw this at an antique store, I'd think that is very good. That's probably like an early Pearl McGowan, or because remember, she started designing in the 1920s. Could be that kind of an age, could be that kind of design. Also, Heirloom Rugs out of Providence did a lot of this kind of design, that very formal, ornate scroll. with lots of flowers. This one is a little bit different because there are pairs of flowers in the corner. And I don't think we always see that. I think that's kind of interesting, right? And then at the top and bottom, there are like a little trio of flowers. So this is a little more developed than some of the scroll patterns we see. And for that reason, I thought it was very pretty. I also thought the colors were pretty. And these are contrasting colors. And as we've said before, we often see the sort of Van Gogh color palette, the orange versus blue yellow, which is like the contrast right across the color wheel, the contrasting color. But the other contrasting color that is the most common is certainly the red and the green. And sometimes we associate that with Christmas. But in this case, to me, this doesn't read really as a Christmas rug. It would be lovely at Christmas with a Christmas tree near it. But the greens are very celery and the reds are very sort of tomato. And it just goes to show how much play there is in one color family for both the red and the green. To be able to have a look that really could go through any season. So just a good example of a good rug, well made, great color, really pops, a little bit of unusual play with the colors, right? Because they are expected colors, but they are a little bit off center. I thought that was kind of a cutie. This one is a much more original looking rug. I don't think at all that this is a commercial pattern. I think this is an original pattern and maybe somebody who kept bunnies or something in the early 20th century. It's a nice kind of a sampler of a pattern for me. I like the silhouette of the two rabbits. I like the little red eyeballs, right? I like the textured material, the patterned wool they've used in the border. Really interesting. It also looks like a blue and a white, which again, really interesting. And then the Greek key design on top in the navy and down below in that nice kind of royal blue color. Really pretty, really pretty. Really pretty because it's such a simple design. I think this is a great example of the kind of a rug where, for example, I did a couple of custom designs this week, right? Somebody wanted some very specific designs, and I thought, oh, so easy for me to do it. Let me just bang these together real fast and make it work. One was like a T-Rex thing, and the other was like just simple line drawings. And when you start a project like that, you think, how is this ever going to work? Like the lines are too simple. There's not enough interest going on. There always is, right? And I always overdo it. I always do kitchen sink school of hooking and designing. But something like this is a great reminder that just two bunnies, two flowers, very simple bar border, and I do too, Barbara. It really has something. And, you know, the simple top and bottom borders too, really simple, like really, really basic. But, you know, this person, even this is very folky, right? It's a very naive looking thing and it looks like the kind of a rug where somebody ran out of colors, which is super charming. It could also be that there's a lot of color loss over the years, which is obviously well possible because it certainly is 100 years old. But I like how even the top and the bottom with the blue are different shades of blue. For me, that creates so much interest. You would expect to find the darker blue at the bottom, right? Because it's heavier, because it's darker. But it could be color change, or it just could be, hey, this is where it's going. I might have enough for both bars, and I didn't. But interesting. I think it's an interesting rug. Isn't it funny how the bunnies in this are a little bit crowded together and not really breaking the border? We've seen designs like this in the 20th century, and almost always when you have this kind of composition and you see that the bunnies are a little bit crowded within each other, they often do break the border, but that is a fairly new idea, to be breaking the border boldly. That wasn't always something that was done. Things were, you know, you drew inside the lines and you kept things inside the box. And this kind of represents that older school of design. I do feel like, and I don't think it really is there, but right between the two rabbits, inside that weird concentric square, I feel like there might be a little heart, or at least there seems like there's a little heart, this little suggestion of a heart, a little suggestion of pink around the edges of that top right-hand flower. It's just a sweet piece. It's a nice, sweet, gentle piece. And here comes a great geometric with what is often called a Maltese cross. So really, really interesting. We talked about this kind of design. I touched upon it today in the design class because it is a thing when you have a your composition in the center. In this case, 5 crosses, right? 1 central one. And you have a lot of busyness around that creates what in design is called a random background, what in rug hooking is called a hit or miss background. Now, the motif doesn't really get lost because they have kind of boxed off the crosses with a little bit of white. Candace, good to see you. Good to see you in Texas. Juliet says, love the bunnies. My daughter has a free roaming, litter box trained house Angora bunny pet. Oh, what a sweetheart. What a sweetheart that must be. I remember when we lived in the Netherlands, there were often rabbits in public places. Like having rabbits for pets was just a really ordinary kind of a thing. And I remember one time my mom said that she was out at a restaurant years ago with my dad and she felt something under the table touching her leg and it was a rabbit. It was a pet rabbit at the restaurant. That doesn't usually happen in the US, but in Europe these things can happen. It's exciting, right? So the Maltese cross rug, really specific, very pretty. And the reason that I like this rug so much is because the hit or miss background is very loud. I'm just adjusting these catalogs. Sorry, that was a lot of noise. Very busy background. Now, hit or miss would have been attractive to people because most people in the 19th century were doing thrift rugs out of scraps, right? So this would be an example of that. And it is a bit wild and crazy, isn't it? There is a lot of repeat of color. There's a lot of that light blue repeat, which is kind of funny because it seems like it wouldn't be a real popular color. There must have been one garment in that color, and they were able to use quite a bit of it because it's a lot. But yeah, it's the hit or miss both in the border and in the background. But you can see that in the body, inside the frame of it, there is an effort to create a lot of color change within the space, whereas around the edge, it has more of a marble look. Like there seems to be an attempt to give the two hit or miss fields a different look, right? And because there's not a lot of color in the outer border, it's just that kind of drawn marble look. It's interesting. It's interesting because I can easily picture the center of the rug with a completely different kind of a motif. So interesting geometric rug that really has a very organic and a bit wild feel to it because of the amount of hit or miss that's happening here. Otherwise, very austere. It's a bit of a contrasty rug for me. It's not a completely easy fit, is it? This was a nice vignette. I appreciate I'm sure if you are a folk art person, you are appreciating everything that you see in all of these vignettes. It is so exciting to see a picture that has this many things going on. But yeah, the hooked rug that is on top of the sort of little apothecary chest of drawers or whatever that is a Waldoboro rug. So it was described in the catalog as a sculpted or sculptured rug. So this is all, it looks like the whole center of the rug is raised, and so is the motif in the border. So just a huge effort in this rug. It's displayed so pretty too with the pots right under it, especially the one that's a similar shape, like right under it. Really pretty. I wish I knew what this would have gone for. I don't know. But I love the central design. I love all of the crazy flowers. I love this formulaic border, right? Very neat border. Isn't it kind of funny how the flower pot, Linda, me too. I love a good vignette. I love a good vignette. Should we make like a t-shirt that says, I love a good vignette? I mean, right? Did you notice my gourds? I'm not drawing attention to my vignette. This will change soon. I love a good vignette. I cannot get enough of a good vignette. And this certainly is one of them. The Sear Auction House is like masters of the vignette. But it's just a nice contrast for me, this rug. The fact that it's Waldoboro is just the icing on the cake, but it's just a nice contrast. Isn't it kind of funny how the bouquet of flowers, because this is a very controlled composition. And obviously the person who made it had what one would call mad skills because of the amount of Waldoboro. Isn't it odd how the flowers are hitting the top line? Like, I don't know. I mean, they're breaking the border a little, but it's not pronounced enough to say, wow, look at that arrangement breaking the borders. It's not enough for that. It's just kind of odd to me that it's just kind of tickling the border a little bit uncomfortably. Now, again, another great sign of folk art that it doesn't fall within coloring within the lines within the box, right? But it is kind of odd because look at how precise everything else is. Interesting. I think little things like this can make a rug more valuable, right? This, in theory, could be a commercial pattern. I don't recognize the pattern, and if you do, please shout it out. But it could be. It well could be. And if it was, I wouldn't expect to find that top flower there because it is a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? One flower and one leaf touching. If you just removed those two, you've got kind of a perfect composition. It's very comfortable again. Everything falls within that band of white. But I thought it was a beautiful rug and an interesting rug. Look at that great portrait over to the side of it, too. Oh, at that time in early American history where lace was such a luxury, right? So beautiful. And I know a lot of you collect those pottery jugs, too. What is Waldoboro? No, Juliet, that's a great question. It's always worth saying what Waldoboro is. Waldoboro is when you hook hook higher than usual. You hook with the intention that you're going to cut and sculpt something. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Jay. Um, you're going to sculpt it like bonsai tree style. So you hook it extra high. And for example, if you're hooking these flowers, you hook the center of the flower or the leaf quite high. And once they're all hooked high, you cut them, right? So it becomes clipped and not looped. And then you take a little pair of scissors, everyday scissors work, and you trim it down so that it has a nice three-dimensional sculptured pom-pom effect. And that is called Waldoboro. And the reason it's called Waldoboro is because it is believed to have come, that style is believed to have been, I think it is kind of a fact at this point, from at least the Waldoboro region of Maine, right? If not the town of Waldoboro, at least that region. And I've read a couple of times, probably from the same sources. I'm trying to think, maybe Mildred Pelledo, some of those books about northern New England rugs and rug making, particularly Maine. I remember reading, and I'm not sure that was the source, but I remember reading that in the cold winter in Maine, when people would die, you know, they were not able to bury with a big arrangement of flowers or a wreath of flowers, which would have been traditional and desirable on top of the casket. So in place of that, because of the cold weather and the no flower situation, women began to, they were already hooking rugs, they began hooking rugs with a high 3D relief uh, quality to them. It was a big feature, like the raised relief. And that kind of substituted as kind of like a trompe l'oeil rug. So you were looking at three-dimensional flowers in the dead of winter, and it was the best you can do. And sometimes I say, and sometimes I think at 3:13 at night when I wake up every night, I wonder how many beautiful Waldoboro rugs are buried in the ground, right? That are over the top of a casket. That's what they were meant to do, just like flowers. But interesting technique, and not different than rug hooking, just a bit more thoughtful, just another sort of level up, as my video game son would say, leveling up just a little bit. And certainly we'll look at Waldoboro this coming year. We're looking at a lot of techniques this coming year. This is an interesting rug. This is definitely an original pattern. This is another pattern that isn't extraordinarily comfortable, but I think it has tremendous graphic appeal. And it's a cornucopia. I believe it's a cornucopia. I love a lot of things about this rug. I think we're looking at a lot of fading over the years. I'm guessing that there were a lot of golden fruits in there and maybe other colors too. I don't know what that kind of bronze green color was. Maybe it was like a purple plum or something like that. But it looks like there is a lot of color loss. And weirdly, the backgrounds with all of this antique black, all of these different shades of black, they have kind of weathered the storm of the many years differently. And we get striations of different colors. Whether the sun is hitting it directly or not, colors will fade over time, without a doubt, you know. Not every color is fast and not every color is lasting. And you do get really not consistent changes in backgrounds. And that's part of what makes these rugs really valuable. This is one of those. It's just an odd rug. If you see this as anything other than a cornucopia, please let me know, because sometimes you do see it as something smart. And I go and say like, oh, this must be an ear trumpet. And someone else is like, come on, that's a cornucopia. Hey, if I do that, call me on it, please. I'm half sick right now. But I do love this design. And one of the reasons I love this design, I love the idea of plenty, of harvest, right? Of bounty. I just love, seasonally, I love that idea. But at the same time, can you think of a lot of instances of seeing a cornucopia tipped this way and with this weird kind of vine stem at the bottom of it? It's very odd. I mean, maybe it isn't a cornucopia, but I think that the description said that it was. And of course, they could be wrong too. But I just thought how unusual. The way that it has faded over the years has created almost like a small patchwork color design, right? On the parts of the color that has lasted. Over on the sides, it's almost like quilt pieces, like little hexy quilt pieces coming down. Really unusual. Super, super clunky shape, right? In your face shape, too far up the composition, wildly erratic antique black background with lots of different colors. It's just an odd thing. And for that reason, I think wonderful to behold. Cat's Gallery, step away from the grave. Do not dig up the Waldoboro rugs. I know it, right? It's not like a metal detector could detect. I wouldn't even know, thank goodness. Otherwise, I would be going crazy. Can you imagine? We better not. We better not imagine that there's going to be a crime wave in Maine, right? Gayla, good to see you. Ryan says, I saw it as a futurist ice cream cone. Ryan, get going on it. This is a great idea for a futurist ice cream cone. That reminds me of the Louis Wain futurist cats. Let's stick futurist for the time being. I love it. I love it as an ice cream cone, a big fat ice cream cone. I don't know if you still have Friendlies near you, but they have the big like Jim Dandy and the banana split, right? Crazy big cones. This is a pair of mittens, but it's hooked. Now, I thought about this for a while because in these catalogs, there were quite a few pairs of rug hooked mittens. And I thought, dang, that's weird. Those must be uncomfortable. But then I thought, probably not more uncomfortable than anything else, right? You're just getting the backs of the loops on the inside, and maybe you're wearing like a house glove kind of a thing, like a cotton glove underneath. Could be. Could the rug be tipped sideways? Melanie, let's see. Let's see. Let's do this together because now we know that this works. Let me send it. Well, I should have sent it the other way, shouldn't I? I should have sent it clockwise. But I don't know. The thing with this one is that I don't think gravity is going to allow the things to tip sideways because then it would be tipped a little bit on a table surface or something. It is such an odd composition. I get what you mean. The tassel is a bit disturbing too sideways. I think it does go straight up. It is just the clunkiest, weirdest cornucopia. It is a good question. It's almost like somebody said to someone else, what should I do for my main motif? And the person was like, why don't you do a cornucopia? And then maybe the other person was like, didn't know what a cornucopia was, but was like, okay, I will do one of those things. And maybe then the other person was like, the thing that holds all the fruit, like the harvest thing. And they were like, oh, a thing that holds fruit. Who knows how these things began? It's always fun to speculate. But it is a very strange cornucopia, without a doubt. At best, it's a very strange cornucopia. So, yeah, gloves. No, I did see a lot of these. These almost have the feel of like, when you look at like gauntlet type gloves of like warriors, right? Like armor type gloves with like that big gauntlet kind of cuff to them. It's that kind of a style, isn't it? I suppose this kind of a style would fit over a Victorian dress with an insanely puffed sleeve cuff, right? With a lot of stuffing on the inside of it too. So interesting, isn't it? It's a beautiful motif, a very Penn Dutch kind of motif. It's kind of heading toward a little tree of life kind of a thing. Very cheerful in the winter. White, difficult, right? Stagecoach days, difficult color, but would keep you warm. I can almost see this when I just said gauntlet glove. It reminded me of you know what movie that I can almost not get through an episode without bringing up. Meet Me in St. Louis. Do you remember the snow scene where Judy Garland was there and I forget what the Margaret O'Connor character was. What was her name? That little girl. She had such a funny, not Trudy. Anyway, the scene where she gets mad because they're moving in the morning and attacks the snowman. In that scene, Judy Garland is wearing the most beautiful sort of gauntlet gloves, and they do look like they're knitted because they go way out over her giant sleeves. So it's a thing, isn't it? Are the mittens thrummed with the roving fluff inside? I don't know. I'm going to remark on that in just a second. Let me think on that for a second. Linda says the previous rug reminds me of Victorian flower bouquet. Oh, the nosegays, the Tuzzy Muzzy. Yep, let me look at that again. You could be onto something. And Juliet, I'm not done with the conversation on this. Let's talk about whether that could be thrums. Hang on. And let me tip this back the way that it was. So you're saying, interesting. I see, Linda, you're saying this could be more of a Tuzzy Muzzy, which is like the little Victorian pins that were conical shaped that people would, men and women, pin to their bodice of their dress or lapel or something like that. And yeah, they often did have a little tassel coming down. It could be. The only thing that makes me think maybe not is because of the amount of things inside of it. But in theory, it could be. If it had a few like posies in it, then I'd say no brainer. That is a Tuzzy Muzzy without a doubt. It could be. It's that kind of an idea. That's a good thought. I like that in tandem with that weird tassel chain that's coming down because it gives it more of a jewelry look, doesn't it? That's very interesting. Come in. That's very interesting. Come on in. Yep. Anyway, so then we came back to the conversation on the gloves. Now, is it thrums? Now, thrums are normally referred to as, if you are not a sailor on the high seas, thrums are referred to usually as, right, in the 20th century anyway, like the edges and the ends of textile, and you get them a lot in mills, right? When people finished the end of like the fabric piece, you would end up with a small edge, like a selvage edge, that would be referred to as a thrum. And it was a part that you couldn't use. And the workers who worked in mill situations and factories were able to, at the end of the day, I mean, you hear this a lot. I don't know if it was universal, but you hear, oh, I was able to pick up all the thrums off the floor and bring them home and use them for something. Also in the UK, you hear this a lot, late 19th and early 20th century. And in those situations, people are more often than not making rugs and things like that, or doing a little bit of patchwork. But if we're talking about wool, maybe, applique or whatever, crazy quilts, you get that a lot. The only reason I think it's, and I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, honest to God. But the only reason I think it's not thrums is because the thrums were like the mill ends. And this is so color consistent, it's so pristine color wise. I don't think it was the ends. It could be that there were lots of ends. It's not impossible to rule that out. But I think they probably had a little bit of white, a little bit of green, a little bit of red, and they cut stuff up or even dyed stuff. You never know. Gail, good to see you in Australia. Good morning, sunshine. Tootie, that was it, Dave. It was Tootie. Margaret O'Brien. I said Connor. What is wrong with me? I'm sick. I am. I'm just going to say I'm sick. Barbara, good to see you. Oh, I'm glad that you're there. And Melanie says the gloves remind me of the gauntlets Eskimo mushers wear. Absolutely. Those are super present in Grenfell style rugs, right? If you picture Grenfell rugs, you see people on dog sleds, things like that. Yeah, they are always wearing this style of glove. Really neat. So I don't really know the answer to that. They are just good looking gloves. They are clipped, right? They are clipped. These are not looped. These are clipped. So this is probably really high pile for warmth, and then the surface has been cut rather than left in a loop. This is another interesting one, a really beautiful and large geometric. So for probably late 19th century rug, I would say this is, most of these don't have a date, right? Because they're not all from the collection of someone who has sort of curated their collection and knows what they've got. But we can see that this is 46 by 69, and it is an extraordinary design because we've got a very whimsical design in the center that is kind of a pinwheel design that, kind of evokes quilt making, right? Like the pinwheel blocks on quilts. But for me, and this is subjective, right? So you chime in too if you feel something different. This is such a weird fusion rug because it's got in the center these pinwheels that look to me like a dinner plate, like it was a piece of pottery of some sort. And then they go right into the circle stars, right? And that always like reads as very patriotic to me. And then they go right into Native American designs. It looks very Navajo, right? The tipped like pyramids, right? I mean, it's just like, or log cabin in quilt talk. It's a fusion of at least three styles for me. And that central motif is really curious because it looks so much like pottery. Again, for me. And we are not seeing this rug straight up, right? We're seeing it sideways. So it could be that if we had like the bird's eye view on top of it, you could stand on one of those super expensive Windsor chairs or both of them and look down on it. You might see it a little bit differently and think, yeah, no, it doesn't look like that at all. It's like super sharp and geometric. It looks like a weird fusion to me, and I love it. I love it. It is odd too how the rug comes in and it almost looks, and it can't be, right? It can't be because unless they cropped the photo of this, I'm wondering if they did crop the photo of this. I think they cropped the photo of this because this doesn't make any sense, does it? Come on, you got to chime in here. This has to be cropped, don't you think? Because otherwise those two sides are way too clean. They created a faux vignette, without a doubt. Without a doubt. none of those four borders to me look natural at all. It looks wildly sharp. I think that's what they did. I bet you. All right, so now we have to backpedal a little bit because I bet you this could be like a welcome mat size. Well, it can't be because it's giving us the size. It's still large, but I bet that that side motif with all the different colored pyramids, right? The Incan steps or however you refer to that motif, log cabin, I bet that goes straight up both sides. And that makes more sense. It's a very emblem driven rug, isn't it? And if they weren't kind of like sort of fruity looking pinwheels, I would think maybe this is some kind of a crest. But I think it is design driven. They're showing it for perspective. Yeah. I wish they would just show it though, right? I mean, we can kind of glean the rest of it. And we could even probably piece it together with a good computer program. But interesting. I just now got that. It's also really interesting the color changes they've got going with the kind of top and bottom, right? Like that weird, it's not weird, it's a patterned pink or red and black with the white. That's just so staticky and good to me. It looks so graphic, right? It's just such a high contrast rug. It is really, really extraordinary. I really love that one. Now, this rug, this is super lovely. I feel like this is either a runner, I think this is a runner or a table runner. I don't have the size for it. I feel like I've seen this character before. And it could be that this is taken from a commercial pattern. And Robin, like what you did with Tis Autumn, maybe the person had this pattern and reversed flipped them on the two sides and created a longer piece for or a specific custom place, right? Entirely possible. But I feel like I've seen not only this exact like stag image before, but that kind of laurel wreath around it, exactly the same with that echoing rack of antlers, right? I feel like I've seen that many times. And then just a really, it seems very English in design to me. I think partly because the roses look like the Tudor roses, right? When you look at Elizabethan art, you get these big, fat, impossible like roses that have this exact breakdown to them. Um, it's an interesting rug. I wish I knew more about it. And these catalogs really don't have a lot of information on them. You usually get their guess as to whether it's 19th or early 20th century and if they have an idea where the origin is. And I know for sure that often when they give the origin, it's still wrong. So if you don't know, you just don't know, do you? You make an educated guess. There's a few things that I really love about this rug. I feel compelled to flip it though, because I feel like it's upside down. This is how it appeared in the catalog, but let me transform it. That's got to be right because we want the kind of laurel shaped wreath to be holding the flowers and not horseshoe style dropping them out on their heads. So this is a fantastic design because we have got that big oval sweep of a wreath shape in the center on both sides and a repeat on the antlers. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the same motif. Me too, Gail. It's extraordinary, isn't it? 5 of the same motif, and then a big repeat motif of the Tudor roses. And that is exciting. The position and the sweet kind of folky gentleness, right? The posture of the animal in both cases, since it's a flip, is really endearing, isn't it? It's very sweet. You don't get the sense that this is a hunting homage or something like that. This is just sweet, very whimsical, very gentle, a little bit Scandinavian, a little bit Penn Dutch, right? In the colors and the way that the lines are so simply done. One of the great things about this rug has got to be the border, right? It has got to be the border. I think this is a I would say mid 20th century rug. I wouldn't even put this at early 20th century, I don't think. The more I look at it, the more I think now it's a little bit of a later rug. And I could be wrong. Absolutely, I could be wrong. Not just that the colors are so good and clear, um, but I mean, just design wise, the amount of borders on this is extraordinary. That's where I was going. I love seeing, I don't, yellow is my least favorite color, but this is a beautiful yellow ground that goes great with the red roses. I have to say, red and yellow together are my least favorite color combination. But in this case, for me, what saves colors that I normally can't stand to look at are the many borders in this, because look how many single line borders there are there. And they are so exciting. It looks like indigos and purples and really tomatoey reds, and picking up the flowers, picking up the details and the hooves, all, all little bits and pieces coming out to the border, dragging your eye right out. And then it's whipped in like a drab green, right? Like a drab khaki green. Exciting. That's really exciting, because if somebody were to say to me, I'm going to do this rug, it's going to be in this color palette. Look at the colors I'm going to hook into this border. It's going to be a many part border. What color do you think I should do the whipping? And I would say any color except like a drab khaki, because you don't want to bring your eye back into the center after doing that kind of a extraordinary border. I would be wrong, wouldn't I? Because this whipped border with all of these little bright lines inside of it really, really pops this piece. And the fact that it wobbles a little bit, it's not perfectly squared. Don't we put too much of an emphasis on being squared and being perfect? I mean, don't we? I just love the way it wobbles a little bit. It's just an extraordinary piece. It's an absolutely beautiful design. I don't know if that's a commercial piece, but I think at least the deer is. And I do think that it has been done as a double. I don't think that it was it's very unusual to see that kind of a runner pattern with the same motif repeated on the sides. Most people didn't do it because most people were capable of saying, well, I'm just going to do it twice. I'm just going to add another one, or that kind of thing. So I think it's an extraordinary piece, and I do think it's a commercial pattern, and I don't know who it is. But is the idea of doing a nice runner like that with a deer, with a stylized deer on each side, is that copyrighted? No, that's not copyrighted. If you love that idea, get going. Draw something that looks like a deer or whatever animal you like. Think about Robin's piece last week on gallery night with Tis Autumn Squirrel on both sides, how well that works. Robin did it with the center being all harlequined out in diamonds. In this case, we have this beautiful bouquet in the center, all of these roses. So pretty, so pretty. And Juliet says, I love the deer antlers and how they picked up the design of the fern. Absolutely. Echoing motifs is a big part of design, isn't it? And when you do that kind of subtle, I'm going to pull that back for a second. When you do that kind of subtle embedding of a repeat pattern, you can then start kissing yourself like this. Mwah, mwah, because you're a genius, right? When you start embedding designs within designs, like the antlers with the wreaths, you are a genius. And yes, you can give yourself all the sort of adoration that you deserve, because that makes for great design. Every time. There's no exceptions. And here we come to, I'm pretty sure another commercial pattern, right? Because we see a lot of dog patterns in the very early 20th century. This looks like a wire hair, like a fox terrier. I don't know where his little ears are in this. Maybe they flap. Okay, they flap down, right? They're flapped down like little triangles. This looks to me, and I'm probably wrong, but this looks to me like the cover of an Agatha Christie book that was called, oh, you know the one I mean, that had the little wire-haired fox in it. It was one with Poirot, and it was about a ball, the dog's ball bouncing down the stairs and tripping the mistress, and all the question and mystery that brought up when she tumbled to her death. Spoiler alert. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it reminds me of that book cover, and it makes me think, is this a commercial pattern, or was this copied from a book cover? It also looks like it could easily be like a book plate, right? You can see that easily. Regardless, whatever the genesis of the design is, it is certainly an older rug. I would put this like 1910 to 1920. I would. It could be 1930. I don't think it's much later than that, although these dogs were very popular in the 1940s. So I don't know. It does have a lot of wear and tear, but that's not always a good gauge, is it? Because most of the wear and tear we're seeing is on the border, where you would expect people to constantly trip on it, right? As you do. I know I do too. Melanie, I love dog rugs. This one has such great graphic shading. That's what, for me, puts it in the Art Deco period, because at this time in art, they made absolutely no attempt to try to get any kind of realistic shading, any realism in there. The better and the more contrast you could do that was shape driven, the more successful the design was considered, because that was the vogue at the time. I like his little bobbed tail. It's a little bit on the big side, right? He wouldn't do well at the Westminster show, or whatever that show was we just saw on Thanksgiving Day. I think he's a little bit of an odd shape, but he's got a cute body. His front legs are very, very stiff. These are things I look for when I'm looking at a pattern and saying to myself, is this the family dog? Is this a one-off? or is this an actual pattern? I'm looking at things like, is the pattern good, right? Because in many cases, most rug companies, the reason that the designer was doing the designs was because they were good at art, and that was their forte. So this is a bit tricky because it's like you can see that his front legs are super, super stiff. But if you know these dogs, these wire-haired fox terriers, their back legs don't look like that. Their legs are also super stiff. They look like little toys. They don't have like that bent sort of hind leg. They have like four little stiff legs, like they look like a little stiff animal, right? So that looks a bit odd to me. The tail looks wrong and the back legs look wrong. Um, I don't know. It could be an Airedale, Gail. It could be an Airedale. It could be the Airedale is the larger fox terrier. The fox terrier is the small one. The Airedale is larger, but it is basically the same shape, the same exact shape dog, but just a different like size and scale. It could be an Airedale. Definitely could because they look super similar. It's a great design. It's really pretty. I love the red collar. I love how the red collar lasted through all these years. Border is like the border we just saw. It's really exciting. All of these different colors popping along that border. It's electric, isn't it? Red, purple. And it does make you wonder, God, what were people wearing? But you know, most of these rugs that are this age, we're not looking at all wool. We're looking at cottons. We're looking at silks. We're looking at velvet. We're looking at whatever they had. This was not a kit. You had to put this together yourself. And it makes it all the more interesting when you look at the dog's body and say, oh, this is a bit of a dark dog, except for his neck, right? Except for the back of his neck. He's kind of got the opposite of like a trucker sunburn, right? It's like on the back of his neck, it's very, very pale. Wire fox terriers became popular in the 1930s. Oh, after the Thin Man. Oh, now wait a minute. Is the Thin Man, is that the same as the Nick and Nora series? And now I'm thinking, remember that comic Tintin? Was there a dog in there that was a fox terrier or an Airedale? Or am I completely confused? I just flashed to the cover of a Tintin book, you know? I think that was like a Belgian cartoonist, but they became very popular here too, right around that same period. I love it when we piece things together. That's a to be continued. The Thin Man. Now I can picture the movie poster for that, right? That's the same woman that was in It Happened One Night, right? I can never remember her name. It is. Okay, so that's like a Nick and Nora. Interesting. And they had a wire fox. That's interesting. I didn't know that. And if I've seen that movie, I haven't seen it lately. So time for a movie marathon, right? There's a lot of thrillers I'd like to watch again because those are mysteries, right? I just love this piece and I love the color selections. And it is so exciting to see the way that somebody colored stuff out because you know that they were sitting there on the couch looking at all the bits and pieces and going, I have quite a bit of blue. I guess that's the ground. Blue is not a traditional ground color, but you know what? This time it is. Interesting. Oh, Kirsten says Tintin was a wire fox terrier according to Google. Okay, so you know what? Sometimes I say to myself, mwah. Just kidding. Sometimes my brain works really well. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. Good. That makes me feel like something is still firing. What a great, Barbara says, Rin Tintin. Oh, Rin Tintin. Now, wait a minute. Kirsten, are you talking about Tintin or Rin Tintin? Now I'm confused. What a great geometric. This is unexpected. Myrna Loy, thank you. Thank you. I don't know why I can never remember her name. She was gorgeous, wasn't she? Very sophisticated. This reminds me of like bullseye glass, right? Do you ever see where you live like these real early American houses with these original transoms or these windows around the door to really drive home the point that the people that lived there were super wealthy and they could afford to have all of this textured hand blown glass in their house instead of just pigged out waxed animal greased pieces of paper, right? That they actually had nice real glass inside their house. Robin says she loves those movies too. Oh, Dave says Claudette Colbert. You know, I think I am thinking of her. It Happened One Night. Both are excellent movies. Okay. Getting our movie list going. That always happens on Friday night to us, doesn't it? We always start doing our lists of songs and movies that we want to revisit. I love this pattern. It's super, super simple. If you were to draw this pattern and you were to say to yourself, okay, here's my piece of burlap. I'm going to draw a circle. And when I'm done drawing the circle, I'm going to square it out diamond style, right? I'm not going to square it square orientation. I'm going to tilt it and give it a diamond. That's it. And then I'm just going to work out from the center, and I'm going to do as much dark as I can until I run out. And then I'm going to do as much white as I can until I run out. But in that center, I'm going to use my best colors, right? I'm going to use all of these different little colors. And when I run out, I run out. And there's a little bit left on it. I mean, it's just a great piece. And you can see from the photo, this does look like, the God's eye right down on this rug, right aerial view over it, because you can see a fairly straight border for a rug this age and not a ton of loss. Could have lots of repairs. Booby glass, is that booby glass? Is that what it's called in some places? That is hysterical. I love that. I love that. I go so crazy when I drive into places that have like real old houses, like Old Deerfield in Massachusetts, very famous for its very old houses. Concord, Massachusetts, where I'll be next weekend. Um, and Newport, Rhode Island, which has the largest collection of colonial era houses there are. Because the colonial period only ever happened in the US, and that's where the most of them are, still there. And you walk along those streets, particularly if it's nighttime and it's around the holidays and there's real chill in the air, and you see Christmas trees and stuff inside people's houses, and you look around their doors and you see the booby glass or the bullet glass or whatever you call it. And it's just so exciting. You feel like it's a Where's Waldo. You feel like you spotted something really special, like the metal detectors going off in your head. I knew it was a dog. You knew, Barbara. You knew. Oh, I just love this piece, and I love the colors. And I would never think about doing a piece that is this basic, but man, it works, doesn't it? Basic is good. This is so interesting for me, finding these. So this is a lot of what they're calling scenic hooked stair runners from Cape Cod, risers and treads. So we've talked a little bit about risers and treads from this period. I would put these in the 1940s, 1950s. Now, you're probably not going to remember this because I barely remember myself, but not this past summer. The summer before, when I went to Cape Cod, as I always do in the summer, I looked on Facebook Marketplace. Let me just have a sip. I'm kind of dying. I know it's beer, but at least it's a liquid. Funny. Oh, Ryan says Red Dust with Jean Harlow and Clark Gable. Recent movie recommendation. Dave, can you send that to me so I don't forget? I know I always say that, but my mind is like a sieve after the show because I have to decompress. Not this summer, but last summer, I went to the Cape, and when I was there, I did what I always tell you to do. I looked up on Facebook Marketplace, and I looked up hooked rug, and I looked up rag rug, and I looked up homemade rug, and I found a bunch of patterns for, not finished rugs, stair risers, and these were them. I don't know if I have all of them. I think I have some that are not pictured in this picture, but I remember, I'm going to have to look up that email, and it is going to take some time, but I'm doing it, to go back to 2 summers ago. But I remember the person who sold them to me said, I picked them up from somebody on Cape Cod. She was in Cotuit, it's one of the Cape Cod towns in Massachusetts. And she said to me, these were Margaret, and I don't remember her last name. These were Margaret's designs. And she had a small rug hooking company. And my heart did, and I thought, I'm going to have to research her. And I did, and I found nothing. I found nothing. So I have never seen a reference to these exact patterns other than in a box in my attic right now, perfectly safe. It's like all Tupperwared out. It's all safe. These are those patterns. And I know I had more because I had a windmill. But I have the whale, I have the Cape Cod, I have the church, I have the lighthouse. I have one house. I don't think I have both. Or all 3. Oh, one of them is people, right? The top right, that's people. I don't think I have that. But I feel like I have 6 or 7. So I might have some that are not pictured here. They came individually. So what you would do is you would buy the treads that you wanted. It would come with both the riser and the tread, right? Mine look like this, like a box. And the idea was the riser part would be the pictorial part that you wouldn't step on, right? So that remained better, longer. And you would do some kind of hit or miss or geometric pattern on the tread, right? Because that would get wear and that would suffer loss over time. So I'm really excited to go back into this rabbit's hole. I don't know how to get much further. It's always worth checking the internet again, just in case something new has evolved. But I thought this was interesting, and I was really excited to see these because I thought, oh my God, I've seen these before. And then, oh my God, I have these. It was very exciting. Speaking of exciting, April. Now, I think this has got to be a one-off pattern. There is so much to say about this rug. Is it a successful rug? I love it for its folk quality. In terms of color and design, it's not super successful, is it? I mean, this is one of my favorite rugs of the night, certainly. This might be my favorite rug of the night, to be honest. But there are a few things going on here. Can you make out, I can make out April on the left. Can you make out, is that a year? Is that 1921 on the right? Something like that? It's such an odd rug, isn't it? Somebody did a flower pot that is just beautiful. Very simple, right? Very simple tulips, and two tiny rabbits. Tiny little rabbits. I'm not even sure the one on the right is a rabbit. I'm assuming it is. Looks a little bit like an elephant, but it's probably a rabbit. Interesting. It could be like a still life or whatever. You don't often see a rug that wants to be both a floral motif and 100% hit or miss. You don't often see that. This is another thing that we talked about in the class today, the Design Like class. When you are talking about designing and composition and patterning, you always want to be very careful when you have got your pattern against a busy background. And in this case, the motif of the flowers and the two bunnies and the text is quite busy. And it does make it a little bit tougher to read what you're meant to read and to see what you're meant to see because of the amount of hit or miss in there. But having said that, that is what makes me love it because it feels like an anomaly. It's very uncomfortable. You really have to work for it. But when you do, I feel the payoff is tremendous because the amount of light hit or miss in this rug is extraordinary. You know, when we say like hit or miss rugs usually have a balance of about 50-50 light versus dark. Well, they usually don't, do they? They're usually more darks and brights. If you think about it, I'd go for 30. I'd go for 34. See, I'm seeing a 2, but you're seeing a lot bigger than me. You think those are the initials PEP, P-E-P. Well, you know, it could be. It definitely could be. Interesting. Interesting. That could be absolutely, it could be an E and not a P. We are all seeing different things, right? And that's fun too. What do you think about this hit or miss? I mean, is this good for you? Is this like confusing? Besides the very, and we know there's a lot of color loss that has happened here. We assume that this is a rug that was put down on the floor, even though the border hasn't taken a hideous beating. This doesn't look like something that you make for the wall, does it? This looks like a utilitarian, ultra thrifty rug. What do you make of the flowers being such pretty, soft colors? And then the pot unexpectedly striped out, almost like a flag, right? It looks like at this point it's a terracotta pot that is outlined in both black and maybe a terracotta or a very dark gold color. And it's either like the sort of greeny bronze and then kind of an ivory and kind of a black. Could be that those colors have changed and it was more like a flag color, possible. But just beautiful. And it brings up all kinds of questions. Is it PEP? Is it April PEP? Is that the name? Is it April 1921? Did April make this in 1934? It's interesting, isn't it? Or was it made in April? It brings up all kinds of questions. Not your cup of tea, Melanie. No, it's definitely not everybody's, is it? But there is a lot of work here. And even in the corners, you see how they did address the corners, like the outer corners. They brought in a sweep in the outer corners, and it does do something with the eye. Having this much of a balance, of an even seesaw between light and dark, which we hardly ever see, does give it kind of a wood grain look, doesn't it? Or like a woodcut, right? There's just a lot of lines. Somehow with hit or miss, I'm not that conscious of this many lines. With this one, it seems very busy to me. I really like it. Dave says, reminds me of the stark graphics of the early 1970s. Yeah, I'd go with that. Lots of children's books with this kind of design in it. It is lovely. I really like this personally. I can see why it's not everybody's cup of tea. Absolutely. Now, this is another curious one for me because I think to myself, is this a commercial pattern? Because this is called tiger. And it could be a tiger. My first thought was zebra, but yeah, I can see with the tail and everything, it's probably a tiger. My first thought with this one was, that's not a very good tiger. And then it always for me brings up the question, is this a commercial design? Because if they put this out commercially and the tiger looks like, I don't know, a bit of a zebra, a bit of a catamount, like it's just it's a bit of a hippo in the front. I mean, it's just a bit of a weird um, hybrid kind of a thing. It doesn't mean that it's not a commercial pattern. It could be. It's a very odd composition. It reminds me of a postage stamp because of the border. Also, that simple graphic of the ground, right? It's just a very graphic block. And no sort of mound, right? No vignette, no animal standing on the crest of a small hill. Just a block. It's a very odd composition. I don't dislike it, and it's very well done. It's very austere. Has that exotic look, right? It has a lot going for it. The border is also very irregular. So if you look at the corners and the rhythm of the sort of ruffling of the border, it's not even at all. And that's another thing that makes me think, could it be could it be a commercial pattern? Because the border isn't very well done. Could it be down to the person who made it? Maybe. But the person who made it was very good. I mean, the person who made it, look, however, whatever you think of the tiger, right? Whatever you think of him, and I totally agree, Ryan. Defo a tiger, long tail between the legs, very feline look. The more I look at him, the more I realize he's a tiger. It's just his tail puffs out so much in the back for me, and the striping is so um, unexpected, right? It's so formulaic. And then the face is weird. I don't know why. Is it because he's missing a nose? I can't tell why it's hitting me weird. But I would say that this person, it's a pony. Now you're making me second guess everything. I would say this person was a great hooker. I mean, look at the ground of this, not just the striping on the tiger. Look at that rectangle, right? That's perfect. Look at the directional hooking in the background. That's perfect. This person was perfectly content with going up and down hundreds and hundreds of times. This person was a very neat and tidy hooker. And if that's the case, what happened with the border, right? If it was a drawn pattern, wouldn't you think the border would be super crisp and perfect and perfectly symmetrical? I don't know. I would assume so. That's what makes me think I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. So we can only speculate and look for clues, right? This is a one-off pattern. This is a great pattern. It's like a Magdalena. It's not credited as a Magdalena, and I don't at all suspect that it's Magdalena just because there's farm animals and stars on it. A lot of Pennsylvania rugs bear the motifs that we associate with Magdalena E.B. Briner. Many of them do because it was like a farming community, right? And people were creating rugs with motifs that they recognized and knew. The stars inside the rounds, that's a very Penn Dutch, very fracture symbol that you see on a lot of early Pennsylvania documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, and a lot of animals that would be recognizable and native to that area. There are two moose in this one, right? And this is interesting because if you remember from our Designing Like Magdalena class, there was always a question about, I think, a moose rug, right? Somebody remembered a moose rug, I think it was. I know that there's at least one of her rugs that we looked at that had a moose in it. And that was a bit of a tripper for me because I was like, Lisa, are there moose in Pennsylvania? I don't know. And I'm not questioning it. I just don't associate that animal with with like that region, right? It's a lovely rug, and it has had a lot of color change over the years because obviously in the center that is meant to be a duck or of some sort, and the colors make it wacky, and it looks like the color might have been black. There might have been a lot more dark in it. I'm not sure. It could have been a brown, but it definitely has faded and changed because they had brown or black on the sides and they didn't use that for the body. As a result, the main motif does not stand out that well over time because it has suffered a lot of color loss. And the reason I don't think at all that this is a Magdalena is because there is some kind of not a fringed but a shaped border around the edge, right? It looks like it's maybe felt, and that's not something that I've ever seen on a Magdalena rug. No moose in Pennsylvania. Okay, so that instinct was good. So we know Magdalena did do at least one moose, and this person did a moose, and it doesn't say where this rug was from in terms of state. It just reminds me of a Magdalena rug because we've got the Penn Dutch symbols, and because we've got the mashup of animals, and because we've got this extreme blocking. So these are all things that we see in that sort of Lancaster County part of Pennsylvania. And it would make sense that people visiting each other that live in the same neck of the woods in the same part of the world would be looking at each other's work and visiting each other's homes and coming up with similar ideas. That all makes perfect sense. This is just very neat early rug. It's got a lot of problems color wise. I don't know, something like this value wise for me would be really difficult to pin, because whereas you do like to see a good menagerie of animals and you do like to see some good symbols on a rug, right, that are familiar, that have meaning, that you can place, but there is a lot of color shifting in this rug. And I think part of the reason is we know that in this part, well, all parts of rural Pennsylvania, or all parts of rural everywhere, people did a lot of home dyeing. And those dyes were not always color fast. Because if you think about it, not everything that you find that stains your clothing stays, right? Some things do, like blueberries. But some things that you would think would have incredible power in terms of being a permanent dye, they don't last at all. So interesting. And people like wouldn't necessarily know this. They would just maybe squeeze something and go, oh, this makes this color. It might make that color for a few years and then it shifts completely. We know that this can happen. So interesting, interesting. Now let's move to the next one. I want to keep an eye on the time too. I'm always running my mouth. This is a commercial design and I know this for sure. And I forgot to, and I'm not even sure it's there. This rug is, when I looked last, this rug was on Etsy also. Either Etsy or eBay, I'm not sure. But it was either called General Store, Country Store, something like that. It was this exact rug. And it wasn't very much money. I feel like it was 100 or 100 and something. And uh-oh, here comes the spam. I remember thinking, well, isn't that a nice vignette? I like a good country store, right? It's got the Cracker Barrel. It's got the sleeping dog. It's got the potbelly stove with the men smoking pipes around it. It's got the little girl at the counter running an errand, right? It's got a lot of old-time charm. But it's definitely a commercial pattern. And if you love this rug, do have a quick look, right? It'll be a race to the finish on both Etsy and eBay because it is there in one of these, on one of those two sites. I literally just saw it like the day before yesterday. Cat's Gallery, same thing happens to my hair dye, only lasts a few weeks. Me too. But see, I call that like the white growing out at the roots. That's more of the shift than anything. This craziness is just because my hair is partly bleached. I did this with Jocelyn last night. We did this last night because we wanted to be festive for the holidays. And mine came out like this, like wildly vibrant. She's the one who wanted it, and hers hardly came out at all, but she doesn't have any bleached bits, right? So she was super upset, and she almost cried herself to sleep. I think she did cry herself to sleep over it. So it turned out to backfire. The best laid plans, right? No good deed goes unpunished. All of those cliches. And Ryan says, I love the man in his pipe reading the paper. Absolutely. Isn't it great? Like these old descriptions of the old country store, right? Where the heating source is the potbelly stove. The amount of people who must have accidentally burnt themselves on the stove, right? That would be incredible. Of course, nobody sued anybody in those days. So it would be like, I'm sorry you don't have a leg anymore. I'm sorry you don't have skin anymore. But it's just the way that it is, right? What do you think of this? I mean, this to me is, this is such a good rug. So it looks like it says Peter, right? But a bit of a different spelling of Peter. Um, what's not to love here? For me, this is not a commercial design. This has got a bit of the Monet color palette, and I think I feel that because of the shape of the leaves. They aren't water lilies, but don't they feel a little bit like watery? Maybe it's the colors. Maybe it's all that concentric sort of marble cake squaring out in the background, all of those browns and darks and blues filling in that background border, all of that shaping out of both the horse's body, the sky, the ground. What's going on with the blue and white? Who cares? It's not working the way it's supposed to work, is it? But it's giving such great charm to this piece. The spelling of Peter, questionable, right? But maybe that is exactly the way that it was meant to be spelled. The little bright centers to the flowers. Now that's a pony gal. That's true. Look at this soft body. Doesn't this remind you of that little, the stag, the double stag that we looked at? Doesn't it remind you of that? The roundness of it, the softness of the face, an over round face, right? A little bit stylized. And it's funny because the face and the body are a little bit stout, a little bit barrel-like, two perked up ears, not quite anatomically correct, but very sweet. little nose, little defined nose there, so not exactly um, photographic reality there. Very stylized. But isn't it funny that despite how round this little body is, the mane and the tail are very boxy? That's what I love about the way that this horse feels, that it's so folky, right? It's not quite right at all. And the front legs look much smaller than the back legs, although the pose is quite good. It has this weird roundness to it that ends with the hair. The hair is really, really boxy. So there's a weird balance in this rug for me, but it's so whimsical and the colors are so romantic. It looks like it could be an illustration for a children's book. It's so sweet. Ryan said, snapshot of someone's favorite pet animal around the home. Love the story of this. Me too. Oh, I just love this. I mean, isn't the border with those browns fantastic? And look at that blue background. Isn't that fantastic? And I suppose it could be a snowy ground, or it also could be like a golden ground that has just changed a little over time, or it could have just been the colors that they had. But these are really sweet colors, and I don't think that we see, in terms of color palette, I don't think we see enough rugs that are brown and pastel. Isn't it a great combo when you've got these great spring colors? No blacks, right? We're not doing Art Deco. We're doing browns. We're doing a variety of browns. That is a beautiful and soft color palette that is certainly going to end you with a piece that looks like quite antique-y. And this is a newer piece for sure, right? This is a much later 20th century piece. The crease of the catalog was such that I could not scan this without having a glare. It was impossible. This is a lovely piece. It's another multiples piece, right? It's another one fold piece. If you fold this over, you have exactly the same design. Not exactly. You have almost the same design on both sides. Look at the leaves under the chicken's feet. Those are where we kind of deviate. The leaves don't quite match going all the way around. For the most part they do, but not entirely. The birds do. It has that French provincial kind of a feel, right? Like a Provence kind of an aesthetic to it. It's got a lot of graphic thought, right? All of the color changes, the sort of shadowing, that kind of greeny gold. Oh, thanks, Jay. Shadowing of the neck coming right down the shoulder of the wings, right? The part that really blows me away are the tail feathers, because there's like part of them are done in that bright orange and the rest in that really, really dark red. It's just very thoughtful, isn't it? What they have outlined in orange, what they have outlined in red, what they have outlined in black. It's very thoughtful. They have done something also thoughtful with the kind of mirror image in the center. They are very conscious of this being a mirror image. And for that reason, I guess, we've got that kind of bridge between the two birds in that darker blue, and then that kind of round hourglass shape on the bottom. Right? It looks like they were shaping it out in the same way with the intention of putting the lightest colors in matching places, right? So that the background was pretty uniform. And then a very busy border of leaves, again done in a variety of different color outlines. Unexpected. The ground is another story. This is done in so many different styles because the birds are very graphic. They almost look like they're pottery birds or salt and pepper shaker or something like that. But then you get this very leafy border in all of these colors. And it's like, wow, completely different style. Right? There's so much color, so much autumn color in those leaves. It's very different. There's a lot of primaries in this rug, but they're off center. So it doesn't really read as like a rug made of primaries. It's very French looking for me. I don't know about for you, but for me, when I look at this, I think of Peter Mayle and that whole Year in Provence series, and I'm picturing all of their dishes, right? Beautiful rug, much newer rug. Not this one. This is definitely a 19th century rug. This has had massive color loss. I absolutely love this rug for so many reasons. This bold graphic. What do you think? Is this some kind of a lily, like a calla lily or something coming up the center? Because I can't recognize, I'm not a gardener by any stretch, and I can't recognize this plant at all. But I love the wild background. This is definitely a lot of color changing over time. I love the geometric, really sort of fly by the seat of your pants border on this. And I love the way that it sort of evolves in the corners into a zigzag or a rickrack, right? And even around the edge of the borders, they've triangled off some of the sharp edges. It's almost like a saw blade, isn't it? I mean, it's such an unusual motif. The plant itself, super unusual, but it seems to me it's communicating like new growth. And then there's two sets of initials, which makes me think it's some kind of a wedding rug, right? Something is beginning to grow, and there are two sets of initials. Maybe not. I don't know. It could be sisters, right? Because it is MH for the last two. It could be two sisters. Who knows? Who knows? Somebody might know if we know what family this came from. But it's an extraordinary rug in its simplicity, but also in its charm, because this kind of a graphic certainly is more of a 20th century graphic, but this is not a 20th century rug. Somebody in the simple way that they sort of oversized reminds me of a peace lily. Oh, Lisa does it. Oh, that is really interesting. Huh. Well, I mean, with all of the wars from like between the 1880s and the 1910s, I mean, it could well be a representation of peace. If I recognize the plant, it would be a lot easier, right? But you could be well right that this is a peace lily. What does that make those motifs on the sides? Does that make those like flowers or petals? Because those look the spear things look very leafy to me, and it's just kind of odd to me that the one component that appears for sure to be a flower is so undersized compared to the rest of the plant. It makes for a fabulous design. A botanist would have to guess also. Yeah, I agree. It's super stylized. Um, I just love it with the bloom in the middle. Yeah, I think those must be leaves. It's so odd, isn't it? It's so odd, and the colors really, really grab you because you can see there was so much color in the corners of this rug, and in the background of this rug, you can see what they were doing. Lots of directional hooking, and yeah, I would be willing to bet that it was a very colorful rug in its day with an all black background, and a lot of that has kind of receded to grays and browns at this point. Beautiful rug. Now, I just want to remind you that all rugs that are, if any 19th century rug that we're talking about is going to be copyright free, and most of the ones we're looking at tonight are. I think this is an Art Deco era rug, so I'm looking at early 20th century for this one. This one could be a commercial pattern. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm not sure that this is right side up. Sometimes when things appear in the catalog, they're not necessarily. Let me flip it because I feel like it's too bottom heavy the way that we're looking at it. Let's transform it vertically. I don't know. That looks a little bit better to me. That looks a little bit better to me because the centers of the flowers, they've gone out of their way with some of the centers to change the color on them. Those usually are, I think, up rather than down. Oh, and then the smaller flowers, right? The supporting cast of flowers that are like buds in the background. Definitely this is the right side up. This is just an unusual design. Yeah, I'm staring at it kind of stumped because it's almost like its own little plot of land or something, and I'm thinking, is it representational? Is it supposed to be part of a garden, or is it supposed to be a piece of greenery on a different ground? I just don't know. I have not seen a composition like this before where the shape was this irregular. So if I were looking at this rug and I put my hand over the bottom half of it, I'd say to myself, I think there's supposed to be another flower in there, and I think that dark brown color is supposed to create an oval in the background, and maybe that just didn't happen for so many reasons, right? Barbara says the flowers look like stencils. Absolutely, Barbara. They do look like stencils. Ooh, Barbara, okay, I think you're cracking the code here. I think you're cracking the code. Okay, well, that would make sense, right? That would make sense because the Victorian period, well, the early American period going right through, very stencil heavy, right? People were super familiar with stencils and they used them a lot for floor painting, painting those wooden floors, wall painting, murals, doorways, everything. Quilts, right? You see a lot of early quilts that have been stenciled rather than appliqued or pieced. Interesting, Barbara. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. It could be that they were using stencils that they already had, Edward Sands Frost style, right? Maybe they had these stencils for something else in the house. It's really not a lot of stencils, is it? It's basically the big one and the small one and the buds. And they're doing, well, the greenery is pretty well mirrored, isn't it? This is really an interesting rug. Now that you said that, it has really become much more interesting. I think you are absolutely right. I think they were doing something with stencils um, that may or may not have worked. I mean, I don't think it's unsuccessful. It's just a bit irregular, isn't it? We're not used to seeing the field in the center of the rug being something that's shaped kind of like a yoke, like for an ox, right? With this weird sort of mouse hole in the center and then two heavy parts on the sides. It's a bit unexpected, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Juliet says, looks adapted from a stained glass design. Also could be. Absolutely also could be. I think we are in agreement that the motif is borrowed from some form of decorative art. That someone was looking at something else and went, I got it, flowers. And the flowers are done in a really particular way, right? The person who did these flowers saw a flower as something that was kind of round and perfectly and equally framed like a wreath around the edges. And that's really not what flowers look like. And when you see more realistic renditions of flowers, you don't get this perfect symmetry of leaves around them, right? Interesting. It does have a super naive quality to it. Isn't the palette interesting too? Really unexpected. Dave says, kind of moody. I'm loving it. The more I'm looking at it, I'm loving it too. This is coincidentally another example of a rug that's done mostly with like pastel colors, or at least not full tilt colors, and all browns. Interesting. Barbara, I really like that. The more I look at those small green pieces, they look like the legs of a lobster, don't they? They're just like little articulated pieces with lots of joints in them and lots of buds. Really, really different. Interesting. Now, I think I use this one for the thumbnail because this is just such a crazy, I'm going to say cat. I'm going to say cat. You know, I have a cat that occasionally, if you have cats, you get used to their crazy expressions, right? Occasionally the cat just does this look, this very look, and then for like 5 minutes starts to run diagonally around the house with its tail like a stick, like a rudder, right? And then it just suddenly ends as quickly as it began, and just the cat sleeps for the rest of the day. This is the look. This is the look of the deranged cat that's about to have the crazy 5 minute run. I love this. I love this piece. We are seeing 3 legs and a tail. So I'm guessing that the other leg is tucked under. It still definitely reads as a cat. Very folky cat, maybe on a coverlet, right? On like a one-piece quilt or a 9 block, right? Uh, very simple design, floral design. It looks like they made it up as they went along. Came out really well. Hard to tell what the original colors were because there's a lot of ivory left now for us, and there's a lot of black. We can see the black veining on what were definitely leaves, right? I would guess. But also those stars, is that like a star motif? Is that veining on a larger leaf? Hard to tell. Hard to tell. The color loss is very uneven. Um, the face is just hysterical. I think the character of this cat, if I were valuing a rug like this, I would say this would have a very high value because of the amount of color in it, because it appears to be an original design. And if it's not an original design, if we find out that this was in Edward Sands Frost design, I'm going to say it. It was done in such a way that it doesn't look anything like it. So that has value too. I'm not going to call it an epic failure or anything like that, but if it is a commercial pattern, it probably wasn't done in the way that the designer intended, right? It has a much more folky quality to it. Dave says, I had a cat for 15 years, Minu, love of my life. Oh, that little sweetheart. I have Pitter Pat right now. We lost Farmer Bramble, but we have Pitter Pat. The love of my life, I think, was Pie Wicket. That was my all-white cat. I also loved Sandwich and Lunchbox. Those were all cats are good, aren't they? For the most part. This looks like a bad cat, though, I have to say. Just super colorful, really beautiful piece, very simple. One of the things I like about it, I don't always like a ton of color in rugs because I find it distracting, and then I have a problem with my eye finding harmony in the color balance, particularly with a rug that has changed color over the years. But with this rug, what my eye likes about it is that the border is very pastel, and the central ground of the checkerboard that the cat is laying on, whether it's a rug or a quilt, um, and it's probably a rug really, because not many people back in the day would let a cat sleep on the bed or on a textile. But it's really bold. Those colors are really bold. And that might be a coincidence because of fading, but I just think it's interesting that all of those really brilliant colors are right in the center. They're really rich colors. And around the border, it kind of fades out like a vignette, right? Interesting. Beautiful rug. Never second guess yourself if you want to depict your pet, because some of these rugs we're looking at of family pets, rabbits, dogs, cats, pony, right? They are not well done. We're going to say it. They are not well done, but they are charming, right? And in a folk craft like rug making, charm has got to count at least as much as technique and perfection. So this is a beautiful rug. I have never seen anything like this, and if you have, please let me know. But I have not. I love this. I love music. So it's nice to see a staff with all these musical notes, and it's going to play us the song "Home Sweet Home." Um, it's a very simple rug, but it has a very strong motif. And you'd be hard pressed to find a collection of rugs. I could never make a show. Sorry, I'm sniffling. Out of a collection of rugs that had a musical motif. There's not enough of them out there. Sue's, great to see you in Kansas. I like your Christmas tree. Puts me right in the mood. Happy December, by the way. And for Patreon supporters, thank you so much. And I will have something out to you over the weekend with a free pattern. I'm going to give you a couple free patterns this month too. Through the holidays, I want to be sure, through the winter, I want to be sure you're stocked up on patterns and that you have lots of choices. So I'll get that out this weekend. I've just been killing it lately. I really like this rug. And what I like about it is, like, obviously the person who made it, music was a big part of their family, right? And not every family had the situation where there would be people playing music, or people who had the time to play music, or people who had learned to formally read music. But this shows that the person who made this did. And for some reason, they thought it was a strong enough motif to use it as the entire rug. And of course, Home Sweet Home is just a great kind of welcome mat. It's a great romantic, sentimental sentiment, right? So this would be appealing for a lot of people, but I don't think that it's a commercial design. I feel like if it was a commercial design, we would have seen more of this over time. And I'm not sure that in terms of commerciality and selling and marketing, that this kind of a motif would be appealing to a lot of people. The text on it is a little wonky too. It's not quite squared out or quite even, right? It's not balanced completely well. But it is a beautiful rug. It's beautiful. It is just what it says it is, right? And this is a rug in the same vein with this kind of board game feel to it. White to play and win. So help me out here. Is this checkers, right? Because it looks like it's a checkerboard, right? Sometimes I can't tell the difference. Oh, Genia, great to see you. Sometimes I can't tell the difference between, with something like this, chess and checkers, but I'm not seeing like rooks and castles, and I'm seeing things that look like singles and doubles stacked. So I'm guessing that this is, oh, thank you, Suze. Thank you so much. I'm guessing that this is checkers, because I haven't played checkers since I was a kid, but isn't checkers where you can like stack checkers on top of other checkers and then you get taller towers of checkers? In any case, I think this is just so funny and cute. White to play and win. I don't get it. I don't get it. I guess this person always played the white checkers, and maybe this was a family joke or a family wind up, right? But it's just a cool rug, and I've never seen anything like this. And for a rug that is such a simple design, the introduction of the text and the playing pieces that are visible, that your brain can't help but going, who's winning? That makes it such an interesting rug for such a simple design. Just very, very fun. Very simple and fun. Another simple and fun rug. Help me out here. What is going on here? I looked at this and I thought, okay, this must mean something, surely. A square rug, right? We don't get a lot of square rugs. We've got the 3 stars. We've got, do you recognize the symbol? We've got what looks like the peak of a mountain, and it's ringed off. And I'm thinking, okay, fraternity symbolism. Have I seen anything like this before? Have you seen anything like this before? Are these stars, is this a teepee or a mountain? What do you think? I mean, it's so odd. It's so unexpected. It's obviously meant to have a dark ground. Um, I'm confused about whether there's any color loss at all here because you can see there are very similar browns, grays in the background. I wonder if that's how it's meant to look. And then there are some really severe blacks, right? The bottom of the structure and then around the crown of that peak, whatever that peak is meant to represent. And the rings around it. I mean, it's got to mean something. We could do with a little text on this rug. It looks like a very old rug. If you look at the hooking, particularly at the bottom, it certainly looks like a 19th century rug. It looks like somebody had a lot of orange and white, too. So for a rug that has so few colors, it's such a curiosity for me. This one was driving me crazy when I was looking at it because I just couldn't pull anything out of it that I thought could be useful. And I was hoping that if any of you had any deep thoughts, remember Jack Handy, that you would shout them out because I would latch on to anything in this case. It is so odd. And if you do, we'll come back to it for sure. Now, we are seeing a lot of animal rugs tonight because we're looking at a lot of designs that are not commercial designs tonight. And it's the easiest thing in the world to do a cutout or a paper, you give someone a piece of paper and say, you're a good artist. You want to draw a horse, and then someone draws a good horse and you cut it out and you trace it. And you got two. And then you got a great design. I'm going to pause for a second because Melanie made a good point here. Looks like the pyramid on the back of money with the rings. It could well be. Isn't the period, sorry about that, that was a bit risque. Isn't the pyramid on the back of the bill a Masonic reference? Aren't there like a crazy amount of Masonic references on the dollar bill, including the eye and all that? It could be. Now, I know there's a bill sitting on the table out there, but not one in here. You're probably onto it. That's a much better idea than any that I have had. It could well be. It could be the top of the pyramid. Is the pyramid on the dollar bill, does it have rings around it? I mean, it might. It well might. I would certainly expect it to have star. Doesn't it have a ring of stars around it? The pyramid on the dollar bill. I feel like I'm getting confused now. When I was a tour guide, I bought a book because we often used to tour the mint, like where they make the money in Manhattan. And they would take us to the area where they made paper money and stuff, and these were like Smithsonian tours. And I had this book on the bus that I would say to everybody, take out a dollar bill if you have one, or pass them around, because we would go through the book and it told you on every page what every symbol meant on the bill, and it was extraordinary how many symbols were crammed onto one little piece of paper, front and back. But it was always extraordinary. Masonic, yes, I thought so, Melanie. I thought so. Interesting. Dave said, might work as a pillow top mixed with other cushions. Yeah, this one here, right? This remains a great curiosity. I like the idea of the money, and I can't wait to look at a dollar bill to see if I can get any further with that there. So this is a really simple composition. What's different about this one for you? For me, there's a few things. Like the muzzle of the horse on both is that dark color, which I think adds a lot of charm. The eye on both of these horses is very sweet. Instead of being a dot or a line, it's kind of a teardrop shape, isn't it? Like they have these big almond eyes, don't they, horses? And it's like, this to me is like someone who really loved and knew what horses looked like. So I thought this was interesting because even though these are very simple shapes, the few details that are in these horses, I think are very lovingly and familiarly handled, right? Oh, Melanie says it has concentric shading with rays of light. Bob the Puncher says the Orion constellation is of the pyramid and 3 stars. Stop it. All right, hang on. Ding, ding, ding. I think that's what we got here. Do you think that's what we got? The Orion constellation is of the pyramid and Bob, you always come up with these answers. I feel like we're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we have got to call Bob the Puncher because you always know. This has to be. I want to know more about it. I just grabbed it from my phone, but I'm not going to do it while we're live. I'm that tempted to read about Orion. That is so interesting. That is so interesting. Thank you. Last week you gave us the lighthouse, right? I mean, that was like the highlight. Suze, thank you. That was the highlight of the episode. That was so funny. Gosh, you're good. Yeah, I know it, right? I just love these horses. What I was going to say, besides the soft muzzle and besides those very tender looking eyes on these horses, do you often see top to bottom vertical hit or miss hooking? Come on, you don't. You really don't, do you? And they even went full blast. I think probably there was a color change with dye loss over the years with the horse. I think probably at one time the horse on the right was probably much closer in color. Like they probably thought they almost had the right color going. Um, but over time, I think it faded, just like the border. I'm thinking the border was probably much richer. It looks like there's shades of red in there. But I'm just blown away by this hit or miss background because it brings up the question, why? Pierre, great to see you when you logged on. Great to see you. Oh, you know, Pierre, one of our viewers, Jane, watched. She wrote me yesterday and she said she had stopped at yours and Linda's show and she enjoyed it so much. So she said she'd watched and because of it, she knew that it was open and she stopped and she enjoyed it so much. As did I, as did everybody who was there. So this is just an interesting rug, just something different. It makes you think next time you're going to do the hit or miss in a big way, why not do it top to bottom? Why not? Totally different look. Now, another very simple silhouette driven horse composition. And how, again, tender is this? Right? We have got these perfectly paired adult horses. And just the clunky way that they're standing, I think, is so beautiful. It's so soft the way that their faces are meeting each other. They're not perfectly symmetrical, right? One has got a little bit of a smaller head than the other. They have matching harnesses on. They have very similar, they look very similar. You can see why they would be attracted to each other. They have a very similar look. This is so strong and so beautiful. And that little sort of colt below them, the baby, right, is in the negative space that the two grown-ups are making. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, this is another thing we were talking about in the class today, pattern making and being careful about your motifs. In this case, we have 3 motifs. They are all horses. 2 of them are paired. 1 of them is standalone. And when you have your motifs, one of the things you're thinking about is the relationship, the spatial ratio between the motifs that you're using and your background. This piece absolutely demonstrates the height of consciousness when it comes to spatial relationships in simple design. Me too, Gail. It's just so beautiful. The little horse, the little colt horse could be bigger, but I'm very glad that it's not. It looks so tiny compared to the adult horses. And the adult horses seem to have so much love. There is so much love and gentleness in this piece. And this awkward little youngster underneath them, the product of this sweet love. It's just so sweet. This would make a great marriage rug too, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Or baby rug. I just think this is an extraordinary piece. And it just goes to show when you have a good design, it doesn't have to be fussy. It can be good and simple like this and absolutely so effective. This is another example of that. This is a little bit more of a mishmash. This is referring back to the class again, Wednesday and today. This is what you would call a random pattern, right? In quilting terms, this is a scatter pattern or a toss pattern. It's random. You've got a very solid ground, a very heavy border, right? It's very controlled around the edges and in the background. And for that reason, can you afford to throw in a random ton of shapes that are all different colors? Not only are they different shapes, they are different colors, they are different sizes. How can you do this? Well, you can do this because everything else is solid. If you add a hit or miss background, even with the outlining, you would expect to be really working to look at this rug. It would be tough. With a solid background, God, it looks like somebody in my house opened about 12 different board games, kicked up a huge mess, and then didn't put it away, right? And I'm just looking down at all of these pieces of the many games going, what tornado came through this room? It's super fun. And it's super colorful. And there is a nice balance of color. And there is a similarity to the scale of the pieces that we're seeing. It's a great piece. It's a super charming piece. It's definitely playful. Can't you see this like in a game room or a TV room? I mean, wouldn't this be a great fun rug to have? And look at the few little pieces that are there. Not all of them are meant to be a shape, right? We've got some just little slivers of rectangles. We've got some little circles, little groupings of circles and weird triangle and pie shapes. And then we've got things that are truly shapes. And some of them are filled with solids and some of them are filled with obviously patterned materials. And they all work well together because the background is so austere. Beautiful, simple, very effective piece. This is another one that was in the crease. So it was a bit of a struggle to try to get it without the glare. It comes with the glare. I think this is a much newer piece. I think this is a mid-20th century piece, maybe a little bit earlier than that. I don't think this is a commercial piece either. It's a very boxy piece. But for me, this piece, simple though it is, lack of perspective and proper proportion though it has, um, I absolutely love this piece. It has a bit of a sort of chevron quality to it. All of this unapologetic striping out in crazy colors. Let's just stripe it out. What color are we going to have now? Purple. What color are we going to have now? Pistachio. Who cares? It's just beautiful. They shaped out the train. The train is an image that works as a multiple. So, hey, it works. That beautiful, big, irregular, golden sun, perfect. Or moon. It's hard to tell because we've got a good balance of darks and lights in the sky. Probably a little bit of color loss here, but I expect that this was always a pretty wild rug. Yeah, Barbara, perfect for a child's room. Absolutely perfect. As a piece of folk art for the wall, I would love to have this piece. It's not a motif that I'm interested in, unless someone like Judy Garland is singing like the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe in the background. Unless that's happening, trains are usually not for me. But this one is so cubist and crazy. And the handling of the entire background, sky and ground, is so whackety stackety. I just love it. Another detail that I really love here is that bizarre plume of smoke that's coming out of the is that the engine in the front? See how bad I am? I know the caboose is in the back. That must be the engine that's in the front, right? It has that little, I'm going to say pipe or stack, some kind of a stack coming out of it, where all the smoke is coming from. And you see how the smoke goes straight up and then makes a right turn, right? It does a dog leg, right? It just dramatically turns. I love the aggressiveness of this piece. The color blocking is super aggressive and it just creates mood, doesn't it? That's the thing. Color wise, it's got a wacky mix of colors, but there is such a mood here because I think it's a very aggressive piece. Thank you, Suze. Love having the thumbs up in the comments. I am sure that this is a Garrett Blue Nose. If it's not a Garrett Blue Nose, it has to be a Rittermore pattern, doesn't it? It has that look. So this is one of these half moons or demi rugs that's meant to go in front of a door, possibly like boudoir, bedroom, dressing room, powder room, that kind of a thing. It could be like a universal. It could be a pattern that was in a common room, but it does have a bit of a feminine feel to it, doesn't it? When I think about it, there are a lot of catalogs from the 1920s, also in the U.S., where we see a lot of these deco halved patterns, right? So they're exactly the same side to side. We do see a lot of these that look like they want to be a movie theater rug, but they're only a little demi rug for in front of the powder room. They usually do come in this sort of Aunt Lydia style, these really stylized flowers that are meant to be blocked out color-wise and outlined in black. Is there an option to outlining in black? No, not really. It really wanted you to outline in black. This person, you can see there probably was an issue with the black because one tier up from the flowers in the center, they outlined in army green. I love this one too, Melanie. It's very striking. It's very striking. It's odd to me. It's odd to me that absence of anything in that middle top. And I guess that shouldn't be odd because I do kitchen sink style of work, right? So I'm expecting one more flower up there. Looks quite good without it. This rug is a little uncomfortable for me because I love the Art Deco style, right? I love the sweeps of color, right? Really bold. It's weird to me that there is a spiral motif in the bottom that's cut off, but only one. Because normally when people intend to spiral out like Deco era style rugs, you get a lot of what look like cogs. You get like the early steampunk look because you get that style of pie flower all over the place. But this rug, it appears once and only as a half. that seems really unusual to me. I would really expect to see this in the corners or up again on top or repeated in one of the sprays or at least somewhere else. But hey, nobody consulted me, and I wasn't even born yet. It's still a great design. It's a very strong design. It's a very striking design. But for me, it's a little bit uncomfortable that there is a crop on one of the flowers, but none of the others. But design-wise, obviously, it's a brilliant piece, and it has a lot of style. It's a very sophisticated piece. And wacky color choices with the sunflower yellow and the grays, right? We've seen a couple of rabbit rugs tonight, and this is my favorite. I mean, the April one is also right up there. I'm going to take a quick little sip while you look at this. Haven't we seen a lot of rugs tonight with unexpected pastel elements to them? This is like a really pink house, isn't it? With a really red door, tomato door, orange door. I guess all of the houses had that, except the one on the right, a little bit further back, it looks like it's along a further path. We have got 3 rabbits, I guess, who are sitting together, conversing on what? Easter, where the eggs are hidden, who knows? The plan of action, reviewing Watership Down, who knows? But this is a very pretty, certainly original pattern. This is so folky and charming, right? We have got levels of interest here. This is somebody who thought, I've got a good idea. I've got another good idea. I want to do some rabbits. Let's make them look like this. I think the most successful one is the one in the middle. The other two, the lumpier they look for me, the more I love them, right? The more charm they have. But these are quite lumpy. I love the houses in the background. The second from the left looks a bit cropped to me. Now, you do occasionally get this very 17th century, very early American style house with this harsh slant, like a half a salt box. Occasionally you see this, but I've never seen one quite this severely cut. And I'm wondering if it's just like an illusion that, like, the silhouettes of trees are representing clusters of trees or different neighborhoods. I'm thinking that the person who made this was thinking of specific houses in a village, and wouldn't it be wonderful to figure this out? But probably none of these houses are standing anymore. Or if they are, they look like quite old houses to begin with. They also look like they could be outbuildings. But I just love the attempted symmetry here. The 3 rabbits, and 3 is always a good number for your main motif. Certainly they're the main motif. When you go upward, and then you've got the village, the shelf of village interest, where it's like house, tree, house, tree, house, tree, house. And that makes a lot of sense. And perfectly matched to those 4 houses are 4 swags coming down, very theatrical from the top, right? And there has been some attempt in those swags to create kind of a hit or miss style. It's very funky. It's very cool. It's very simple, isn't it? I just love this rug. There is such a great charm. Juliet says, looks like a bigger Mama Bunny on the right. It does. She is the clunker. Bob the Puncher, well said, Juliet. I was wondering why that was larger. Yeah, that could be the mama. That could be the mama staring the babies. And it does make me wonder, looking at the rabbits, because they are, the 2 on the left look pretty identical. It makes me wonder, do they have like a statue of a rabbit, or do they have like a print of a rabbit? Were they looking at a picture of a rabbit? Because this is a very still rabbit, and it's done kind of exactly the same way the first 2 times. It makes me think, what were they looking at when they drew that? One of the things I really love about this piece is the white. Now that really is white. I wonder what they had that they could spare that was that pristine of a white. And I wonder if that was meant to look like that originally, because it gives great contrast to Mama Bunny's face, right? Her silhouette really pops because of it. But it is a bit of oh gosh, we have a lot more to go. It is a bit of a wacky intrusion, all of the sort of white striation. I'm probably not going to get through all these tonight. I should have known. Another vignette here, and it's a lovely vignette with a lot of like hand-painted stuff and a checkerboard, but I wanted to put this in because I really liked the hooked rug on the ground. I love a good basket as much as I love a good vignette. This is a really, really good basket for me because it is tipped and it is hard to see. It's a very bare basket, isn't it? For such a large basket, there's not much in it, right? We've got like a few flowers and a couple of leaves, and that's about it. The basket itself is really the prestige. Yeah, Bob, the whites were just really, really stark, even more than the blacks, right? This is just so odd, breaking up the basket, making not that much out of the flower component. What's in the basket? Because that really usually is the story, right? Look at the bounty of this basket. Look what's inside of it. In this case, it's like, look at these 3 flowers, but take a look at this basket. It's broken up into all of these crazy diamonds of color. You know, the emphasis really is on the basket itself. I think it's super charming. And this person, whether it's commercial pattern or not, and I suspect that it is, I don't know whether the border was drawn in this manner or whether they just absolutely went to town and created this scalloped border with all of these rows of concentric hooking, right? Dark, light, or like dark maroon, dark, light, tan, repeat, rinse and repeat, just right out to the edge. But beautiful shaped scallops, very round, very lacy looking, very, very well done. Interesting. This is a great rug for this time of year. I have not seen this before. I don't think that this is, I'm just giving you my opinion, right? The 4 corners were great. This is obviously the night before Christmas. I think that this was taken from the illustrations in the book, The Night Before Christmas, because it looks just like one of them when Santa's leaving the rooftop. But the roof is done not as a house, but like a hillside. Also fine and easier, right? So I think that might be what's happening here. I can't be sure. I didn't bust out the book. I haven't taken that box out of the attic yet. But you can see this is a great composition where they knew they wanted to use the night sky. They knew they did not want to give Santa a face, right? It was going to remain anonymous. He's the man dressed in red in a sleigh being drawn by reindeer, so that's pretty clear. And he's got his whip at the ready. The reindeer flying off into the night. This person knew, I love it too, Suze. I think I will definitely put this one up in the ribbon candy hooking store over the weekend because this is just a great one. A few of these that we're looking at tonight, I will put up in ribbon candy hooking tomorrow. I love the way the village almost looks like a snow globe. What's the chance of snow? 100%, right? I love the way that it looks rounded like that. It almost looks like another stained glass window, right? Almost like a little Chagall vignette over there. Beautiful, bright red windows, like flames, like candlelit windows burning out of the houses. Very traditional, very European looking. This person knew they wanted a dark sky and for the figures to pop. And they understood that they were working with a dark sleigh with the color red and with a bunch of brown animals. And they knew that they had to make it pop. So what did they do? They outlined in light color. So that's smart because it does pop. Does it create plenty of confusion also? Absolutely it does. But I think probably when this rug was first made, there was less confusion because there wasn't so much color change in the background. One of the reasons I don't think that this is a commercial pattern is because of the corners. I don't know. It doesn't seem, I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit for me. These very simple rose corners and this very busy composition. And the kind of shape of the ground, launching out into the sky, I'm not sure. I think this is taken from an illustration and that the person wanted the kind of photograph corners from a scrapbook and probably went, well, what could I put in the corners? Let's put roses in Christmas colors, white and red. Perfect. Let's do it. Green leaves. That makes more sense to me because making a composition that had those cropped corners doesn't make that much sense to me. But that this person wanted them, that's fantastic. I love the coloring under the sleigh too. That is super, super unexpected. Absolutely beautiful. Seasonal and beautiful. I think this is my favorite piece tonight. This is needlepoint, but I had to include this in the slideshow because this is a needlepoint lamb's tongue rug. And I've not seen this exact kind of hybrid before. You often see a hooked rug center or a wool applique center. In this case, we're seeing a needlepoint center and tons of lamb's tongues. What are the lamb's tongues made out of? Felt, usually, sometimes cotton. They were often made out of felt because often with these style of rugs, the lamb's tongues were made to be detachable so that you could wipe your pen on them. And if you wiped probably not a decorative piece like this, but just as a form, when you get these pen wiper type penny rugs, it would be that you could detach whatever lamb's tongue you used to wipe your pen, right, that would be spewing ink. and either replace it, clean it. You would put something in its place that wasn't covered with ink. So these rugs are fun to find. This one is done with a buttonhole or blanket stitch around every one of those tongues. There is really no color rhythm to the threads that are finishing the lamb's tongues, but you can see that initially, at least on north and south of the needle point, they did try to put all the kind of oatmeal colored tongues with the light blue buttonhole stitches. So in that way, they started off with a plan, and then it looked like as it went out further, they were like, give me a maroon one with some brown checks. And I think it benefits from that variety because it just looks so lush, doesn't it? I love this one too, Jay. This one is crazy. So this is a little needlepoint that has been done on some kind of little needlepoint canvas. I don't know if it's petit point or needlepoint. It could be small, it could be larger, hard to tell the scale. So it probably is regular needlepoint because that white border is extremely fine, but beautiful image in the center. And you can see that they have folded the canvas under and stitched it down. And you can even see the edge of the canvas when your eye looks around the needlepoint part. They've just tucked it under, hidden it, and attached it, tacked it onto all of these lamb's tongues. And it might be that they first had the lamb's tongues. It might be that something else was in the center. It might be that this piece was made for it because color-wise it's absolutely perfect. Who knows? But this is to me a marriage, a match made in heaven, right? It does, Bob. It takes so long to do needlepoint. And needlepoint, if you've ever done any kind of needlepoint, you remember that unlike rug hooking with needlepoint, you have to put your stitches, your diagonal stitches in a certain way, or you get that diagonal twist. And then it's very hard to overcome that, right? You don't want the twist, you don't want to have to overcome it. You don't want it to twist in the first place. That's one of the things about needlepoint that always turned me off, that if I was doing it on the tour bus when I used to work as a tour guide, and I would not be thinking, and I'd be chatting with people or listening to music, and I go, oh, I did this whole area without doing it in the right order or alternating so that I didn't have all my stitches together. And now it's like doing a little bit of a twist. Oh no, because needlepoint is not cheap. If you think rug hooking kits are expensive, check out some high-end needlepoint. I mean, they're really expensive. So yeah, I agree. Lots of time, and for me, just not enough glasses in the world anymore to do this kind of work. Well, look at one more. Cross stitch to start. Maybe it is a cross stitch. Ooh, you know what, Bob? I think you're right. I think it's a cross stitch. I think you are right. I think you are right. I'm just gazing at it and thinking, you know what? I think that is a cross stitch. It looks like a cross stitch, right? So with cross stitch, every component, every little dot that you're seeing is actually a tiny cross, right? It's two stitches that cross and make a tiny cross. It does look more like that because each square is absolutely square. It almost looks like a micro mosaic, and that is definitely more of a cross stitch look than a needlepoint look. Bob, you are good. You are good. You are good. Give yourself some kisses on the biceps, right? You are good. Another horse, but very different. Very different than the horses we've seen tonight. Again, another running horse. How can there be so many rugs of horses that are worth remarking on? I don't know. I'm not even a horse person. I'm terrified of horses. I'm the only one in my family who does not ride horses unless I'm forced to, and then I'm just seized up with panic. They scare me because they're huge, huge creatures. But this one almost looks like a weather vane to me. Are you feeling that too? Like the person who drew this, it's like, does this person really know horses, or is there a weather vane on their barn? It screams weather vane. I think mostly because of the crook of the horse's neck. I love the way that the body is filled in. All these concentric blocks, right? Blocking right into the center. Super, super, super cool. It shows you exactly how this person worked. I love seeing how the work is done. This is another sort of depiction of a horse that is really curious for me because the tail comes up a little bit short. I know some horses have cropped tails and stuff like that. Maybe this is like a thoroughbred who's running, because the legs do look good. They just almost look too good. They do, Gail. People love their horses, don't they? For me, the thing that makes me feel weather vane is the neck and also the face coming down and then like the snout or muzzle at the bottom. That teardrop eye again, it just looks so perfect. And it's kind of unexpected because the hooking isn't like amazingly the best, but the horse's shape is quite good. So it makes me think, what was the source for that? Bob says, and something in front of the horse. Is it a car? I think in front of the horse, that's a flower. That's like a yellow flower coming up. I thought I saw like a black cat hanging off the edge of the flower, but I think it's just the way that the hit or miss happened. And then all of these levels of hit or miss color that probably didn't intentionally come up with so much orange and yellow, but at the end of the day, they did. In it, for me, it kind of evokes sunrise or sunset, and of course, the sun being there, whether that's a rise or set, very hard to tell. Very, very colored out hit or miss background, right? Really different. Under the horse, like that's a lot of color. So what's happening under there? Are they just using a color change, like a patterned wool? Is that what's going on there? Is that like some crazy plaid or something? Cat or a black dog, Gail says. I feel like there's a cat maybe laying down, maybe not clinging to the edge of the leaves, but maybe laying a little bit further back. A pig. Well, I'm not seeing a pig, but there could well be a pig there. I'm seeing some kind of, obviously there's a flowering tree or an apple tree. It's got to be an apple tree on the right, right? So that's, you know, now it's got me thinking because I feel like we have seen a horse composition with an apple tree before. Could this be a commercial pattern? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it's good enough, right? I don't know. If you know, make sure that you let us know whether it's now or later. It is a beautifully well done tree, but the amount of changes that they did in the background and the way that they tackled the background, sometimes they tried to be doing sort of color sameness and then they just gave up and did full blast hit or miss. And for some reason it works because I'm not struggling to see that this is a horse with flowers and a tree, maybe a pig, right? I'm not struggling too much with it. And I think that's because of the silhouette quality of the horse. The horse is a super lumpity block of a horse. And weirdly, the apple tree is absolutely perfect. I can even see those like little black dit dots on the apples. Like, yeah, this is a very curious rug again. When I see stuff like this, I think, did more than one person work on this? What is happening here? Because there is some very good hooking and there is some less good hooking. But I guess the less good hooking comes down to we ran out of colors, but guess what? We've got a lot of yellow and orange left. Very different. I would love to see this in person because I would love to look at that, the material under the horse's body. I would love to look at that in really good detail and figure out what could that be? What could that be, honestly? That is just a lot of color. Absolutely beautiful. Let's stop there because we have a few more rugs and that'll give us something to play with when we start on Monday morning. So I might add a few more because I have like 50 in the show tonight. We probably have another 10. I might put a few more. We might transition into next week looking at some more antique rugs. But I do love looking at these rugs. When we look at older rugs like this, it really connects me to our rug hooking past and the idea that people were 150 years ago working this craft the same exact way that we are now, except they had a bent nail and we've got a nice hook. They were working it exactly the same way. And I just love thinking about that because it connects us, right? It connects us to those generations of people. And it's just exciting, isn't it? And the way that they solved problems, because they didn't have a lot of choices, did they? If you ran out of material, you ran out of material. What was your choice? To give up and forget about it? To wait until you had more material and have cold feet until then? You would just work with whatever you had, wouldn't you? I mean, you just would. And you would get a product like the rugs that we're looking at tonight. I just think they are so charming. They help us with problem solving. They help us with history. They leave us with lots of curiosities and mysteries that I love solving live with you all. Yeah, Bob, and let us know. Always leave comments. I have to say, lately I have been busy enough that it's been really hard. I need to go and look at all the comments because people leave a lot of comments on the videos. And I'm so sorry if I haven't answered because you know that I care about what you're writing and you know that I will read it. It's just been a bit of a busy time with me also being quite sick for so long. And this kind of sick for so long. But I do plan to get back into it and answer all those comments that are on those videos because not everybody watches live. So so feel free to leave videos. And if I haven't answered yours, it's not because I don't love you. It's just because I've been everything. I will see you on Monday for coffee time. And I'll just remind you, next weekend is my weekend that I go away to Concord. And if you've been with me for a couple of years watching these shows, You might remember it had to be 2 years ago. I tried to run a show from Concord. It was one of these things that turn my hair white. That's where all the white came from. Because there's like no signal at the Colonial Inn in Concord where I'll be with my family next weekend. So I'm not even going to pretend like there might be a show on Friday night. It's just they have no signal. I can barely make a phone call. So I'm thinking that through in the meantime, and I would like to run another show this week. So I'm trying to think about whether Sunday night is a possibility, or we might do it on a weeknight during the week. But I would like to come to you with 3 shows this coming week, certainly Monday and Wednesday. And you know that on Tuesday, Kirsten hosts the Zoom. So that's always a lot of fun. Log on to that if you can. I will if I can. Busyness has prevented me lately. But we will be together next week for sure, and we will figure it out. But certainly I'll be with you on Monday and on Wednesday, and I will look forward to it. And if you need me in the meantime, you know that you can find me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. I always look forward to hearing from you. I will try to get back to you sooner rather than later for sure. And in the meantime, everybody, have a great weekend. Happy weekend. Patreon members, be looking out for an email from me this weekend. And everyone else, if you liked some of the more interesting rugs from tonight, be looking on Ribbon Candy Hooking, because I'll be translating them into drawings and offering them as patterns if you're interested in making any of your favorite rugs from tonight.